You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Welcome to Living the Gospel of Life. I am your host, Leticia Velasquez, and today I'm delighted to be interviewing Aude Dugast, who is the postulator of the cause for beatification of Venerable Dr. Jérôme Lejeune. She is a philosopher who worked for the Foundation Lejeune and never met Dr. Lejeune, yet she spent at least a dozen years gathering information on him to write this amazing biography. Welcome, Aude, to the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation.
Did you first get interested in the Foundation Lejeune and Dr. Lejeune?
Why did I first was interested?
Yes.
I was interested by the life of Jérôme Lejeune and the work of the Jérôme Lejeune Foundation because we work at the service of the children and person with Down syndrome. We called person with trisomy 21 and all people with mental disabilities. And we have a medical center for them. And we do research to find a treatment for them. And we also go on with the mission of Jérôme Lejeune to be their advocacy, to defend their right to life. And this is a wonderful mission. And of course, when they proposed me to join the team, I say yes. And this was 20 years ago.
20 years ago. Wonderful. I'm going to remind my audience that I am the mother of a 19-year-old girl, Christina Maria, who has Down syndrome. She was born in 2001. And I had known about Dr. Lejeune as an active pro-lifer on Long Island, New York, where I grew up and I lived most of my life. There was a group of people, Long Island Coalition for Life, who used to do fundraisers. They did walkathons to help his research in the 80s when I was single. So I knew about his research vaguely, not particularly interested because I didn't have a child with Down syndrome at the time. I mean, I thought it was a good idea, but I didn't understand the significance as I do now. Anyone who's had a prenatal diagnosis of trisomy 21, trisomy 18, knows the feeling of being isolated and that sometimes family members and doctors are encouraging you to abort the child. So this is a crisis that God has sent us, Dr. Lejeune, to help us to battle. But fortunately, in my pregnancy, I refused prenatal testing because I said no matter what my child has, I was almost 40. I knew there was a possibility. No matter what my child has a right to life, even if it is a very brief life. That is what God wants. So anyway, but I learned about Dr. Lejeune, and I was particularly inspired by the book Life is a Blessing, written by his daughter. It's a bit of a memoir. It's written with a lot of love, but there's a lot of details missing. And I was dying to know all the extra details, so I was very happy when the film came out a few years ago. To the Least of These was a documentary on Dr. Lejeune that filled in some of the blanks. But your book, Aude, is amazing. It reads like a novel, but it's also an encyclopedia of knowledge. You have pages and pages of references in the index so that if I wanted to write any kind of paper on Dr. Lejeune, I've got everything I need. And I want to thank you for that. I couldn't put it down, but I also had to stop many times to ponder the depths of what he was saying. He was an incredibly smart man. He understood many different fields. And I'm sure I will be able to reread this book many times to plumb the depths. So you call the book Jérôme Lejeune, Man of Science and Conscience. Why did you choose that title?
Oh, because when we talk, of course, he was a great scientist and was very famous, one of the best geneticists in the world. But the term science evokes knowledge, excellence in the field of scientific competence, a form of expertise, and that's great. But that's not enough to tell Jérôme Lejeune, because a scientist is going to be more and more now technical, and technical expertise does not mean wisdom. And Jérôme Lejeune, of course, was very wise. He was a wise man. And it was very important for me to say more than science. And I thought that conscience was very important to describe the way Jérôme Lejeune wanted to be a good scientist, a good geneticist, but especially a good physician who was really at the service of his patients. And we will talk about it, but he was a great Christian or Catholic, scientific, and he has these two eyes of science and faith, and these two eyes gave him a deep view on the world, on creation, and for his patients. And this is a reason why I wanted to put that word conscience after the word of science.
It's a sad commentary on modern day science that you needed to add that word, conscience. It should be assumed that a scientist has a conscience of what his discovery will do to the world. I know Dr. Lejeune initially was an expert on nuclear radiation, and he spoke around the world, including, I believe, representing the Vatican in Russia at a meeting with the Russian premier about the devastating effects of a possible nuclear war. So he knew the destructive power of science as well as the beauty of science, and was a moral leader in the scientific field for which he paid a great price. Like you said, we'll get to that. I want to start with what he is most famous for. In 1959, he released a paper postulating that Down syndrome was caused by an extra copy of the 21st chromosome, the smallest chromosome. So instead of 46 chromosomes, like most of us, children with Down syndrome are born with 47. And he initially was looking in the laboratory of Dr. Chapin in Paris at the palm print, because he says the palm print will tell us a lot about the development of human being. But with his deductive mind, he discovered how to line up and dye the chromosomes so they could be examined. He would pair them up and photograph them over and over till he got the photographs right. And he re-examined his findings many times that Down syndrome was a matter of an extra chromosome so that he could be sure. And that he was already a well-known scientist, but that made him instantly famous. So he won the highest award in genetics, the Allen Award, and the John F. Kennedy Prize from John F. Kennedy himself, and was nominated twice for the Nobel Prize. At the ceremony of the Allen Award, he was approached by two scientists the night before that were running the ceremony in San Francisco to not bring up ethics. And he did anyway. He was very distressed by the entrance of eugenics into science. Eugenics is it can be the selection of the best of a breed, say with cows or sheep, to have them breed. But with human beings, it has devolved into selective abortion. So he was very concerned about that, and he addressed that in his talk and started controversy in his life, because scientists don't want to be, in that time, didn't want to talk about the morality of science. They didn't want their conscience to be involved. Am I right?
Yes.
So, and what I find very interesting is that when he discovered the cause of Down syndrome, he was very humble about it. Most people would use that as an opportunity to feel great and to brag. And he said, in fact, I am almost ashamed of the petty celebrity that surrounds a discovery that leads us to no treatment. It is necessary to do something. So he instantly felt the call to try and find, okay, now we know what causes Down syndrome. Now we have to treat it or cure it. Because he felt that the patients were asking that of him. And he understood that their lives were threatened by the discovery. Do you want to discuss that?
Yes, I think it's a very important point for the Jérôme Lejeune life, because this first discovery was a genetic revolution. It was the first time that they discovered a chromosomal disorder. And so it's the reason why we call him the father of modern genetics, because he was the first to find this kind of disorder. And for that, he could have been very proud of him. And as you say, it was not the idea. The only thing he was interested in was to cure these children, to help them, and to take care of them. And after this first discovery, he really put all his heart, all his strength, all his intelligence, all his science to work more and more to find how to treat them, how to help them, how to cure them. So the only thing that important was important for him was to cure them. And it was not his vanity, his power, his career. And this is very important because we touch there his incredible humility. And this is very moving because Jérôme Lejeune was, we can say that he was a genius. Right? His intelligence was genius. But he never used this intelligence to make money, to get more power. He always used it to serve, to be at the service of his little patients who were blessed in their intelligence. Where he used to say that their intelligence was not free, and he wanted to give them back the freedom of their intelligence. So it's very moving to see that this genius was at the service of these children with mental disability. And for me, it's really the gospel. So you kneel in front of the poverty, of the humility of these children, even if you are a genius. And it's the reason why I used to call him a wise man of the modern age. For me, it's the fourth wise man, the fourth king, who contributed to his science, the revelation of the incarnate word. He was able to see in each of his patients the face of Christ. A lot of parents told me that they were very impressed. They were very moved when they met Jérôme Lejeune for the first time, when they went in his hospital in Paris, Necker Hospital. When they went for the first time, they met him. And of course, they were quite afraid to meet that great professor and a great physician. And they were very impressed by his humility. And most of these parents told me that he looked at their child as if he was looking to the face of Christ. So he saw in each patient the face of Christ. This little child abandoned his fragility to the protection of the adults, and he was there to help the parents. And he loved really these children like Jesus Christ. And we see there that it's like a wise man with his science, his genius. He come in front of this baby, he kneel in front of this baby, as if it was baby Christ. And with all his science, immense, he bowed before the child with humility. And after, also we can say that, like the wise man, he did not go back to the government and to the administration who asked him to help them to kill these babies. On the contrary, he took another way, and away from the administration who want the abortion, and you propose another way to cure them and to love them. And so, for me, this idea of the wise man of a modern age is very important. I think that it's a good way to describe Jérôme Lejeune.
I was recently watching a rare English interview that he did, and he discussed the abilities and disabilities of people with Down syndrome. And he said the intellectual, disability is only a small part of what it means to be human, that they still have many parts completely intact, if not superior. Their love of art, their ability to love each other and God is completely intact, in fact, perhaps enhanced. And so he had an admiration for people with Down syndrome, in addition to his desire to protect them from abortion and discrimination.
Of course. And he showed that their life has an infinite price, of course, and that each life is beautiful, even with a chromosome, an extra chromosome, or other people who are one less chromosome, or each kind of difficulty. Of course, your life is beautiful, and its price is beautiful. So this was he was testified for that, and for now it's very important, because unfortunately life sometimes is so depressed that we have to testify for the beauty of life, each human life, and he made it with all his science, all his love, and this is, for me, it's maybe the most important thing for Jérôme Lejeune. While studying his life, I was very impressed by his immense intelligence, united with his love, with his heart. We can say that he loves his patients with an unconditional love. Each patient was very important for him. And I have some mother who told me that when they came for the first time to Jérôme Lejeune, they were very impressed, because Jérôme Lejeune looked at their son or daughter as if his son or daughter was a prince. So, this mother told me that it was so beautiful. It was the first time in my life that I saw someone who looked at my child with this beautiful gaze and with this love in his eyes. He looked at my child with as if it was a prince. It was very moving for the mother. So you see, for him, really, each life was very important, was so beautiful. And his love for his patient was unconditional, and with his intelligence was immense. Both united, gave him a strength incredible. So nobody could make him deviate of his duty, his mission. And he was very free. He knew by his intelligence, by his heart, by his love, that he had to cure them, to love them. And the people who wanted to make these laws about abortion and genetics, he said, no, we can't do that. We are physicians. And our duty is to love and to cure. And for him, I think it was simple. It was an evidence. And this is very, very beautiful to see this huge intelligence and this heart so large, so united, this harmony, who gave him this incredible freedom.
And I was very moved by Clara's description of his meeting with the patient and sitting little Pierre in his lap and helping his parents to realize this is not Down syndrome, this is Pierre. It's something that we, in the parents movement of parents of children with Down syndrome, we insist on calling our children by their names. My daughter isn't Down syndrome. She is Christina. And we owe Dr. Lejeune with his beautiful example for that, and also his care for the parents. Many a time when the parents would receive a diagnosis or a child would be born with Down syndrome, he would call them at night, and even if he was home with his family, because he said when parents are upset, they should never wait. And that's very compassionate. I remember the diagnosis my daughter received was very poorly delivered. But fortunately, I had spiritual awareness that my child had Down syndrome. I received a spiritual insight at Mass one day. So I was in partial denial. It was difficult to accept. I had 4 or 5 months where I was going back and forth. But when the diagnosis was delivered, your child has symptoms consistent with Down syndrome, very coldly and clinically in the hallway after I gave birth. I was ready, but it helped that I knew about Dr. Lejeune, that he had dedicated his life to children with Down syndrome. And as I read his biography by his daughter, my heart was warmed by his love for the children and their parents, because his discovery of Down syndrome as being a chromosomal abnormality with no one to blame took some of the shame away from Down syndrome. Clara described how people would cross the street if they saw a child with Down syndrome as if it were contagious, or they would blame the mother for having had sinful past, that it was the result of venereal disease. And all these, of course, were old wives' tales, which science, through Dr. Lejeune, was able to dispel and free the parents from any sense of blame or shame that their child just had an abnormality and was equal in dignity to all their other children. And they needn't be ashamed.
Yes, because now maybe it's more difficult to understand, but at that time, before the discovery of Down syndrome, of trisomy 21, people thought that a family with a child with Down syndrome, it was a punishment for sin. And so it was very difficult for the family, because first their child was with this Down syndrome. No, medicine didn't do anything to help them, because the medicine did not know anything about it at the time, so they could not cure and help in any way. And more, for the society, it was a punishment for sin. And when in a family there was a child with Down syndrome, for example, the sister will never get married, because nobody wants to get married with a woman whose sister was with Down syndrome, because we don't know. Maybe we will have a child like that. So It was really, for the family, it was just awful. It was a fatality, and it was quite the end of the world. But showing that trisomy had a chromosomal origin, and that it was not a punishment for sin, by speaking about an illness and saying that he was looking for a medication, Jérôme Lejeune changed society's views about children with trisomy and their families. And so many parents told me that doing that, he gave them back their dignity. I have beautiful testimonies like that. One of my friend who was 15 years old when he discovered Down syndrome, and she had two sisters with Down syndrome. And she remembered very well when the second one arrived, her father was absolutely down and upset. And fortunately, they heard about Professor Lejeune, and they went to meet him in Paris. And she told me that Jérôme Lejeune gave my mother back her dignity, because she understood that it was not punishment for sin of her husband, and it was just a chromosomal origin. And so it changed everything. And of course, very quickly, his medical consulting practice became the most important of its kind in the world. And he treated 9,000 patients from many countries. And it was beautiful, because he knew each one by name, that show how close he was from his patient. And as you said before, so many parents told me about their first meeting with Jérôme Lejeune, and all say that there was a before and an after this meeting. They arrived wounded with a handicap in their arms, and they left the hospital with their son or their daughter in their arms. And what was the revolution? How it happened? As you said, this is because Jérôme Lejeune, this great professor, took their son, their daughter, put in on his knees, and asked the mother, "What is your child's name?" And many mothers say that that was at this moment that they realized that their child was in the first class. It was Paul, Mary, Margaret, and or Peter, but it was not a syndrome. It was first his son, and this was a revolution in their heart, a new birth, the birth in the heart. And I said before, a woman told me that he looked at my son as he had a prince in front of him, kindly, with infinite respect. So this was very important for the parents. And when the parents left Jérôme Lejeune, they say that it was a sign of resurrection for my family, for my whole family. He made us live. He gave us our dignity back. So this is our words, very important, very strong. And this is the experience of the families. And you know, now Jérôme Lejeune has died 25 years ago. And when the parents explained me this, their meeting with Jérôme Lejeune, when they talked me about it, it could be 30, 40 years ago. And they still talk with so much emotion that I really understand that it was maybe the most important moment in their life. So we can see that there was something very special in the way Jérôme Lejeune took care of these babies and of the parents, as you told before.
In the United States, at that time, 1960, it was very common. We didn't have abortion yet, but it was very common for a child with Down syndrome at his birth that the doctor would suggest that the child be put away in an institution. And in some cases, they even offered the parent a death certificate so they could completely break ties with the child. And as we know, that some of those institutions are absolutely horrible. It's a nightmare. But compared to abortion, it's better. It would have been better. It's very sad that now we understand the cause of Down syndrome. We understand in many cases that the child is equal in dignity to all of us, but we still have an abortion rate in the United States of 58% when a prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome is given. And I understand the rate of abortion is higher in France and Europe.
Yes, it's in France it's 96%.
Wow.
So
what percentage of mothers receive a prenatal diagnosis? Is it very common?
Yes. It's very, very common. I think that France is one of the worst countries in the world for that.
Oh, that's terrible. I'm sure
yes.
If Dr. Lejeune knows this, he's very grieved by it. And the country of Iceland was bragging that they are going to eliminate Down syndrome, which is ridiculous because it keeps appearing spontaneously. And the only way to eliminate Down syndrome is, as Dr. Lejeune said, is to eliminate the patient. He said medicine is not medicine when it eliminates the patient. You should eliminate the disease, not the patient.
Yes.
He always said, love the patient, hate the disease.
Exactly. Yes.
You know, just like we say in our Catholic faith, you know, love the sinner, hate the sin. We don't like what Down syndrome does and limits our children's intelligence. My daughter has great difficulty speaking, and it's a lot of work to take her to therapy. She's making progress. She's almost 20. But it's hard to see her struggle to speak. But it's also beautiful when she accomplishes getting her point across. We tend to appreciate it even more. And she has brought out characteristics in our family. Two of her sisters, we're three daughters. Two of them are RNs, they're nurses, because of they learned to do healthcare and therapy with her as children. I would homeschool them. They would watch her physical therapy in the house. In America, we're blessed. We have all these wonderful free therapies in the house before the child goes to school, if they have a disability, at no cost. So we had physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and my girls would play with her afterwards using the same toys. And it made them very good nurses, very compassionate people. It made them young women who do not judge someone by their appearance or their ability or lack of ability. And I think it made all of us more patient and loving because we learned to give more of ourselves. But unfortunately, society doesn't admire these qualities necessarily. And I want to talk about the phase in Dr. Lejeune's life after he started to speak out for the unborn, for the duty of doctors to follow the Hippocratic Oath, which by now most doctors have abandoned, because the Hippocratic Oath that they used for thousands of years since the Greek doctor Hippocrates wrote it, that they would not give a woman means to an abortion and they would do no harm. And this, unfortunately, this long time practice in medicine has been abandoned. So Dr. Lejeune wrote to Berthe, I believe, one time saying that he destroyed his chances for a Nobel Prize by speaking out against the eugenic practice of abortion because of Down syndrome. That's a tremendous, one of his greatest sacrifices was giving up, this world-class honor he richly deserved. Clara noted in her book that he should have renamed Down syndrome Lejeune syndrome because he was the one who really defined the illness. I get upset when I see parents of children with Down syndrome giving all the credit to Langdon Down, who did good things for people with Down syndrome. He was kind to them, but he still did not understand what caused it. So scientifically, Dr. Lejeune had the right to rename the trisomy 21 Lejeune syndrome. I think it would have been a better name.
Yes, but we can. I know that in US you name more Down syndrome. So, but you right, because when you talk about the nightmare, I think that for Jérôme Lejeune, he made this discovery to, of course, to cure the children, and because they love them, and to see this discovery used against these children, used to make the abortion, before the birth, and for him it was just awful, because of course he knew that so many children, so many babies will be killed with this discovery. For him, it was just horrible. Of course, when he made his discovery in 1958, it was not, nobody talked about abortion. So it was not a question by the time. And it's just 10 years later that in the Congress, when he went in the Genetics Congress in the world, and especially in US, for the first time he heard about the genetics, and some geneticists and physicians were talking about abortion, and he said, but it's just impossible. And of course, for him, as a physician who made the Hippocratic Oath, it was just impossible to give something to make abortion. And he explained that with a very simple way, and just with a simple intelligence. He said, okay, we are physicians, we have to cure, we made the Hippocratic Oath, we can't kill anyone. And if we want to use our science, our genetics, to select the children, the babies, and to kill the babies who are not, who are with a disability, who are sick. So we have to change our job, our work, because of course the mission of a physician is to cure, is not to kill. And it was very simple. And of course, in front of that, you can't answer nothing, because it's so evident, it's so simple. And it's the reason why in France, he was not invited anymore on TV and in the radio and newspaper, because his words was very simple and were very true, and everybody knew it was true. But the people who wanted the laws of abortion did not want him to talk, because it was too true, and he could make so damage for the laws on abortion. And Mrs. Lejeune once was on TV, and she was waiting for him because he was talking on the show, and she heard a journalist who did not know that Mrs. Lejeune was Mrs. Lejeune, and he told to another journalist, he told, "Oh my God, he's too good, he's too efficient. His words are too true. We not invited him. We will never again invite him." So you see, his language, his words were very simple, very true, and the truth win. So the person who wanted abortion did not want to invite him again, because they knew that he was right, and and they did not want to let him talk.
Yes, because he endangered their faulty logic with his truth. I'm particularly impressed by the television appearance he made, maybe one of his last, on October 1970, Dossier de l'Écran, where he spoke with Dr. Perret, who was a proponent of abortion, the first abortion bill in France in the National Assembly. And he said, Dr. Lejeune said, prophylaxis does not mean killing sick people. It will never mean that. They were doctors at that time were trying to say that killing children in abortion, because they were diagnosed by their chromosomes with Down syndrome during amniocentesis, was a prophylactic sort of, preventative, as in taking an antibiotic for a disease. And he said that is not prophylaxis. That's, and the next day he went to his surgery, and a 10-year-old boy who was watching the television show understood very clearly the threat to his own life, that by saying children with Down syndrome could be killed before birth, put his own life in less value and danger in the eyes of society. And he ran up to him and he said, "You must defend us." And Clara described to me that he went home white to lunch that day. He used to eat lunch with his family every day, and they knew something had happened. And he said, "I will be obliged to speak up publicly to defend our patients. They're going to use our discovery to eliminate them. If I do not defend them, I will betray them, and I will abandon what I have in fact become, their natural advocate." So then Dr. Lejeune was naturally a pro-life leader in France during the legalization of abortion. It was happening all over the Western world at that time. And he faced death threats and insults. He had food thrown at him and shouted down in various public forums. It was really disgraceful how he was treated. Again, because you said his speaking of the truth threatened their lives. And they had to silence him because his truth was so penetrating.
Yeah, the day this little boy came to crying in his arms the day after the TV show was very important, because it was I think it was a step in Jérôme Lejeune's life, because that day he decided to become their advocate, and before that he testified in favor of human life, of course, but he did it in the genetics conference, genetics meetings. So so for the scientific community in 1973. But the story with this child is in 1973, and after Jérôme Lejeune decided to talk also in a publicly, not only in the community, scientific community, and he decided to go on TV and radio, and of course he knew that he will get a lot of trouble doing that. That he will get a lot of problems, and it happened. He lose so many money, because when publicly he take the fees of these children, and he decided to say that abortion was not a good thing and that we have to try to cure these babies, the French government was so upset that they decided to the Center of Research decided to cut all his money, and so he did not have any more money for his research, and his team was cancelled. So in 1980, Jérôme Lejeune was at the top of his career. One day was only with just one person to work with him, was physician, and with no more money. So, it was just incredible, because in US, for example, everybody invited him to come to US and were ready to give him money and so many jobs in university and laboratories. But he decided to stay in France, and he worked in France without any help from the government. And the only money he got was from friends, from US and especially the Kennedy Foundation, and from Guatemala and Venezuela, and some French friends, but private money, not public money. So he was really heroic. He was very, very strong to be able to go on with the advocacy of these children and of human life, and with all the troubles he got doing that. But for him, it was not important. The troubles, he did not care about troubles. The only thing he cared about it was these children and the beauty of human life and his duty. And so for him, it was very clear. And so he went on this way, and he never deviated from him.
He was somebody of extraordinary detachment. I remember when he got the job as a dean and he was offered a fancy apartment and a chauffeur and a chef, and his children were all excited. He said no. He didn't want to become attached to these things, and he used to ride a bicycle into work every day through the streets of Paris. Led a very simple life. He turned down a lot of social engagements that he'd rather stay home with his family, because he said he would rather not, because you could fall into temptation. The whole world with its money is a world I do not want to enter into deliberately. And I think that detachment and sense of humility and duty to his patients is what kept him from being afraid. He did not value these things, so he wasn't afraid of losing them. I think what hurt him was, like you said, the abortion of children with Down syndrome and the fact that his research was slowed by the lack of funds, and he had to spend time raising money instead of just putting the time into research. And that, I'm sure that hurt him. There was one time when he was giving a talk with his wife right close to home in the Rue Galland, and his children heard ambulances and police. And they got on their knees to pray because they thought their father's life was in danger. And Clara said every time they heard an ambulance, they wondered if he had been killed. So it was very serious. There was graffiti threatening him that the girls would ride to school on their bikes and would see death to Lejeune and his little monsters. And they would see these horrible things, Lejeune must die. So there's a real hatred of him in the pro-abortion movement. It can be very frightening when you're in pro-life movement, the kind of opposition. And he was very brave in the face of it. You know, most of us don't have as much to lose. I mean, he was an international celebrity. He could have been very wealthy and had a very easy life, but he chose to do the right thing. And that is where the sainthood comes in, the sanctity. Anybody can be a good science and let it go to their head, or even a bad scientist. We see today there's some pretty bad scientists that are very famous right now because they have no moral compass. They create a disease and then they pretend to have the cure for it. But either both are a lie. But Dr. Lejeune was the servant of truth. He was the servant of life. And he didn't see any difficulty with being a Catholic scientist. He was just uncovering the beauty of God's creation. He wasn't trying to dominate it and to put creation into the convenience of man. I'm fascinated with the conversations you wrote between Dr. Lejeune and his wife Beata and their beautiful relationship, how he could not have been the great man he was without her support, and how he ran all his important decisions by her. He included her in everything he was doing. Wrote her every day. I think you said there were 2,000 letters between the two of them.
Yes. It's incredible. It was really when they were not together, when Jérôme Lejeune traveled to US or other countries, or if Mrs. Lejeune went to the Denmark, where she was from, they wrote together. They wrote one to the other every day. So amazing. We got 2,000 letters. So wow. It's just from the fiancé to the end of their life, the common life. So it's beautiful. Of course, for the postulator, it's just a treasure because I read everything. And I know I discovered so many things in these letters. And Mrs. Lejeune was very incredible because she was too very free. And she told me, Aude, here is the bag where you find all our letters, and you can read everything.
Oh.
And I say, are you sure? Yes, please read. So she was very incredible because I don't know that I would do that to give my letters from. And it was beautiful because in the first letter during the fiançailles and at the beginning of the wedding, Jérôme Lejeune is very luminous, and he explained how he is, and he is very simple. And for example, he said to his fiancée, you know, I am not strong. I am, and maybe I lack of hope, and now that seems absolutely incredible because when we talk about Jérôme Lejeune, everybody says, he was so strong. He was a rock. He was a man who helped so many people and was really, he was always ready to help us. And he was so full of hope, and he was a hope, an heroic hope. But you know that in these letters, when he was 25 years old, he thought that he was without hope and strength. So it's also for the postulator a beautiful way to understand and to see and to admire the development of his sanctity. We know that when he was young, he was not so hopeful and so strong, but with the virtues, day after day, he became this man so strong and so full of hope, and of course of charity and faith and justice and all the virtues. So these letters was really a treasure for me because they helped me so much to understand his hurt and his soul and to see the beauty of their love. So many people who knew very well Jérôme Lejeune and Mrs. Lejeune told that of course there was a great connivance between them, and as you say before, they decided everything together, and Jérôme Lejeune told her everything. And you know, Mrs. Lejeune had a phrase who make us laugh because she always asked him, who have you seen? Who say you what? So every day, each night, he had to say, I met these people who told me that. So it was always the question of Mrs. Lejeune. You met who told you what? And so, thanks to that, Jérôme Lejeune explained him everything, and she knew everything, and they decided everything together.
And now we know everything. I hope these letters are published one day. I remember reading a similar Catholic physician, Dr. Gianna Brettamola, and her husband had a lovely correspondence. It reminds me of that. And I was privileged to see her daughter speak one time in Washington, and to hear her testimony of her mother was very moving. And it reminds me of this, that the two shall become one sacrament of matrimony can take two weak beings and make them into strong individuals because of their union and the grace of God that comes through matrimony. And he took it quite seriously. He did not go into Dr. Chopin's lab without asking Bertha for her okay, letting her know that it would cost him something. It was not the most lucrative career, and there would be a sacrifice. So she was in on that from the very beginning. Before we only have a little time left, I want to discuss his Dr. Lejeune's special friendship with St. John Paul II.
Yes, of course. This was very important in the life of Jérôme Lejeune. They met when Jérôme Lejeune was appointed by Pope Paul VI at the Pontifical Academy for Science. And when the Pope John Paul II was elected in 1981, he went to the Pontifical Academy for Science where Jérôme Lejeune met him. And I think that day Jérôme Lejeune was very moved by the Pope because the Pope made a beautiful speech about faith and science. And I'm sure that Jérôme Lejeune was very impressed by that intelligence and that love for science and truth from the Pope. And the Pope invited Jérôme Lejeune for lunch, and after that first lunch, they met very often. As soon as Jérôme Lejeune went to Rome, the Pope invited him for breakfast and for the private mass or for lunch. And I think that their friendship, Jérôme Lejeune never talked about friendship because of his humility. He did not want to say that he was a friend of the Pope, but everybody know that they were friends. And I think that both love the human life, they admire the beauty of life and the beauty of the creation. And from the creation, they talk about the Creator, and they both were very poetic. They love poesy and theater, and they had the same sense of humor. And of course, both were very, very intelligent, were genius. So I know that for the Pope, Jérôme Lejeune was very helpful. His science was very helpful for the Pope in his battle for human life and human dignity. And this friendship was very important also for Jérôme Lejeune, because by the time in France, the church was not very helpful in the battle for human life. And Jérôme Lejeune needs to be helped. And the friendship of the Pope was very useful for Jérôme Lejeune. It helps him to stand, to stay on his feet in the battle. And by the day of the attack against the Pope in May 1981, they were having lunch together on the day of the attack. And Jérôme Lejeune let the Pope to go to the St. Peter's Square, and Jérôme Lejeune went to the airport to go back to Paris. And when he landed in Paris, he knew that there was this attack. And it was so awful for Jérôme Lejeune, because at the time, at the first hours, we did not know if the Pope will be alive. So we knew that he died. And for Jérôme Lejeune, it was so awful that when he went back home, he was so shocked that during the night, he had to go to the hospital. And he passed 3 days in the hospital without conscience. And when he went back conscientious. His family told that that the Pope was in the hospital and now he's better. And Jérôme Lejeune said, thanks to God, he's better, he's alive. And so the family was very impressed to see that by that he went also to the hospital. He was shocked to go to the hospital. And after that, after the day Jérôme Lejeune died, he died on Easter, on the early morning of Easter, on April 3rd, 1994. And that day, the Pope, John Paul II, wrote a beautiful letter to the Cardinal Archbishop of Paris, Cardinal Lustiger. And he wrote in that letter that to see Jérôme Lejeune died on Easter was for him a sign, very important sign. For him, you see that, of course, it was a sign that Jérôme Lejeune was a great servant of life, dying the day of the resurrection. It was a sign that he was a servant of life and one of the best one. And it was a great Christian of the modern age of the 19th century. And it was very impressive for her, the Catholic, to say that the Pope wrote that letter, because of course the Pope does not write a letter to other people, the scientists who die. And after 3 years later, during the World Youth Days in Paris, the Pope wanted absolutely to go to kneel before Jérôme's grave, who is not in Paris, who is 1 hour far from Paris. So it's you have to decide to go there. You don't do that in 5 minutes. And of course, the Pope was just 3 days in Paris, and his schedule was very, very full, but he absolutely wanted to go there. And he went in front of Jerome's grave, and he explained that it was because Jerome was his friend, but of course it was also because Jérôme Lejeune was a beautiful servant of life, a beautiful servant of truth, a beautiful servant of God, and the Pope wanted to testify in favor of Jérôme Lejeune and of his beautiful mission. And he said that Jérôme Lejeune used all his science, was immense, for the good of humanity and only for goodness of humanity. And for me, it's of course one of the best thing we can say about Jérôme Lejeune.
Absolutely. And John Paul started the Pontifical Academy for Life just before, while Jérôme was sick with cancer. And he said, Dr. Lejeune said, "I'm dying while on special duty." So he founded the Pontifical Academy for Life. I understand that Madame Lejeune was part of it as during her. She took up the baton and started the Foundation Lejeune upon his death, which still exists. She has since passed, but the Foundation Lejeune is still funding research projects, and now they're starting a new hospital for patients with Down syndrome in Denver. A friend of mine attended the opening. I'm very excited about that. So his legacy lives on, both as a magnificent example to researchers and physicians and pro-lifers, and to parents and those that love someone with Down syndrome. So the next step for Venerable Dr. Jérôme Lejeune is beatification. So we need miracles.
So we need to pray a lot.
We pray for that, and we ask for his intercession. I always, when I have a sick child that I'm asked to pray for, I always mention that I'm asking for him to intercede. So we can, how can somebody inform you if they know of a miracle?
You can send a message on the website, amilejeune.org, or to my email that you can give.
Okay. Ami Lejeune is Friends of Lejeune in English. Do you have an English version or just the Ami Lejeune in French?
The address is in French, but the website is also in English.
Is it English?
Can find and the prayer in English.
That is, Ami Lejeune is AMIES, Ami, Friends, Lejeune, LEJUNE.org, friendsoflejeune.org. And you can go to that website, you'll get an English version, and you could add a comment there if Dr. Lejeune has interceded for you. We all look forward to the day that he is canonized. I hope I live to see it. I have one question, though. Will Dr. Lejeune, Saint Jérôme Lejeune, be patron saint of those with Down syndrome, bioethicists, family doctors? I mean, there's so many things that he could be the patron of. Pro-life?
Yes.
I don't want to share him as a parent of a child with Down syndrome, but I know I have to because he has such a great legacy. I want him to be a patron saint of our children. They certainly need it. The United States right now is fighting to ban abortion for Down syndrome. We've accomplished it in several states, but then it's battled in the courts. And we have great big cases right now before the Supreme Court, which could overturn some of the abortion laws. So naturally, there's violent opposition to that. So we definitely need his intercession, and St. John Paul's as well. I'm sure they're both praying for us in the cause of life, which unfortunately has gotten even more difficult as the decades have gone by. America has lost 63 million that we know of, beautiful children to abortion. So thank you so much, Aude Dugast, of the postulator of the cause of Venerable Dr. Jérôme Lejeune, and who wrote the book, available at Ignatius Press. The book is Jérôme Lejeune, A Man of Science and Conscience. It's an amazing read. Like I said, it reads like a novel, but it's full of so much information that if any of you need to do research on Dr. Lejeune, I think for a project for school or an article, I know it was a little difficult for me back 10 years ago when I started writing articles about Dr. Lejeune. There was very little out there. He's not as appreciated as he should be, considering his great gift. So I'm happy to add to his knowledge of him, because there's much to admire. anyone with so many gifts that put them at the service of life and his brothers and sisters that the society considers unwanted. I think that's a great example that needs to be better known. So thank you so much for coming on Living the Gospel of Life, which is based on his encyclical, John Paul's encyclical of Living the Gospel of Life. And we look forward to the day that we have a Saint Jérôme Lejeune. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Leticia.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.